So thanks for the introduction, Andrew. Obviously, I've been involved in founding Megalithomania many years ago, back in 2006, and eventually me and Andrew collaborated on this conference. Now, some of you may be aware that we get around the world quite a lot, travelling, exploring, and over the last 10 years, I've been putting a lot of research together, connecting many of these sites. And I'm really looking for clues that there may have been an original culture creating many of these sites. This is one of my areas of research I'll be getting into today. I'm fascinated by the whole idea of different types of stonework. I've been a megalithomaniac for a very long time, hence we founded the conference called that. And also, I'm very inspired by the work of John Michel. And these are just some of the things we're going to look at today. And you'll see as we travel around the world, it just gets stranger and weirder and more odd. And the more you find these correlations, and it just kind of blows my mind the more I travel. So these are just some of the things we're going to get into. Obviously, one of the things that keeps coming back to the centre is Giza. Now this just seems to be the centre of the ancient world, the sort of Giza grid, you could almost call it, where everything seems to come from there, geodetically, sort of almost like the whole stonework style that we'll be looking at seems to originate from there. But there are anomalies that kind of stretch around the world from there. We'll also see lots of serpents and spirals, and this is kind of compels me, because everywhere I go, I kind of find more and more evidence of this. Now, whether it's just a coincidence, whether everyone just liked snakes in ancient times, and they like doodling spirals, very hard rock, I don't know. Maybe it is a coincidence, but there might be more to it than that. What I don't believe is a coincidence is the polygonal walls, the cyclopean megalithic style that we see in many different parts of the world. One of the things that gets me more than anything, I'm not sure why I'm holding this mic, but I'll hold it anyway, is the supersized megaliths we find all over the world. It gets a bit ridiculous to suggest that the people who built these megaliths in different continents had no contact, and they were just doing it, accidentally. They would just create massive polygonal megaliths, building in this certain style in all different parts of the world. I'm sure if we just scattered around the world and started from scratch, civilization from scratch, we wouldn't suddenly build loads of massive megalithic polygonal walls with protrusions and reliefs on them. So I believe there's some divine order going way back and an influence that goes a lot further back than we might imagine. And then when you look further into it, you keep finding these very strange skeletons. Very large, giant skeletons, as we'll get into and we'll see evidence of as we go through this lecture. Also these strange skulls that are very elongated and have cranial deformation and have even different amount of sutras, almost non-human, some of them. I'm not going to get into anything too controversial here, but this is just some of the things we're going to have a look at. But before that, I just wanted to kind of honour John Michel, really, and these are just some words of his I'll let you read for yourself. John was really a big influence on me, huge influence in fact, and he was, possibly the biggest influence on the whole Earth Mysteries movement and the Ancient Mysteries movement as well. The way he kind of opened up the doorway to a whole invisible world of possibility regarding prehistory. And he was very interested in the megalithic sites as well, and I really feel like I was one of his students. And so I kind of honour him here. He passed away a few years ago. I'm sure many of you knew him. And some of his words that kind of caught my attention, especially the whole idea that it was a global phenomenon and we're only just starting to understand what it's all about. Hence this conference. So we must think about connections around the world. So one of my researches that I've been doing for many years is the whole idea of Earth grids and the whole idea that there is a connector in all these different countries and that the people who built these sites did connect them worldwide. I'm not going to go into grids today. You can buy my book outside, no problem. And it goes into it in more detail, but what I'm more interested in what is actually at these different sites around the world and what the evidence is that there was some kind of prehistoric advanced global culture. These are just some of the things we'll kind of delve into. Obviously the grid, these strange skulls, these giant skeletons, mummies that have been found. And I'm very interested in these polygonal walls that obviously we find actually on the casing on 2 of the pyramids on the Giza plateau. So it's kind of staring us in the face. But also we find it obviously in Peru and many other countries. Here's just one example of some of the geodesy or connections around the world. I just want to throw a couple of examples here. This is an alignment between Newgrange, an island, and the Giza pyramids. Now, I was very interested in this because that alignment is exactly 1/10 of the planetary circumference. I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, is that coincidence? And the more I looked into it, and as you'll read in my Earthbridge book after this lecture, you'll find that it's not a coincidence. There's more and more evidence of these geodetic connections. Here's another one. This is a massive earthwork site called Newark in Ohio, America. And there's some of the most interesting sites I've ever visited in my life are actually there. People don't realise that there's tens of thousands, possibly 100,000 earthworks, circular henges, mounds, many other things in that part of North America. And also, this connects with Giza. It's exactly oriented to Giza. If you draw a line between that and Giza, draw a line of its orientation around there, it hits Giza bang on, over 6,000 miles away. So again, is that a coincidence? Here just shows you some of the serpentine earthworks at the site. And there's just a close-up of the orientation, the sheer magnitude and brilliant geometry that encodes many different things, including the different moon cycles and solar cycles in each of the different angles and alignments. Interestingly, in the Amazon, these have been recently discovered. I'm not sure if you've seen this before. It was actually a TV program on the BBC about a year and a half ago. And since they've been clearing the rainforest, not such a great thing really, but they've actually been discovering great earthworks. And if you look at the lower one here, this one actually looks like a flattened B stone circle as recorded by Alexander Thom when he was surveying many of the sites in the 50s and 60s. And so I find these earthworks fascinating, that there's a whole culture in the Amazon which is unknown. It's just one example of another lost potential civilization. This is in a place called Portsmouth, Ohio, not in England. And this is a huge mega earthwork which stretches over many miles. And immediately I went to visit this. The only part left of the whole earthwork is this small part here. And this immediately, when I saw the original map of it, reminded me of Avebury. And you can see the similarities quite clearly. I think you can't really deny that. Obviously it's about 7 or 8 times bigger than Avebury. This Avebury is probably about, would easily fit 7 or 8 of those inside the main circle there. And you have this strange avenue here. Earthworks, not stones though, is the general rule in that part of North America. This just shows you some of the geodetic connections lifted very graciously from Graham Hancock's Heaven's Mirror book. Thank you, Graham. And we applied it into the Earth grid theory in my book, and how different distances around the world from Giza match very clearly pentagonal and processional numbers, which I found particularly interesting. It's almost like they're not chance, they're not just put in sites, major sites around the world by chance. There seems to be an order and a design behind it. And this just shows you what the world would look like if Giza was the prime meridian, which I believe it was many thousands of years ago, not necessarily in Greenwich. Here's just some examples from the book, which give you the distances, the degrees from Giza. And on the right-hand side, just the degrees apart of different sites around the world. Just a few examples, just some basic research using computer-generated programs, including John Martineau's World Grid program, as well as Google Earth. Amazingly, it's amazing what you can do with Google Earth nowadays. And here just shows you some examples of latitudinal harmonics between Luxor, Avebury, and many other sites. How they 1/7, the 7th parts around the world from each other. I'm just flicking through this quick just to throw some examples at you that there's more to this than meets the eye. And this just shows you some of the interesting angles that encode its own coordinates, and a great Earth circle that connects Giza, Mecca, but most interestingly, Stonehenge with the Preseli Bluestone sites. This is the work of Robin Heath. So there's a lot going on here. These are just a few examples, but fundamentally what really got my attention here, I've been travelling to Peru and different parts of the world for the last decade, but this September I went to Göbekli Tepe and all over Turkey with Andrew and Graham. And it really surprised me what I saw at Göbekli Tepe, being that it's supposed to be 14,000 years old, the oldest part of it. Because some of the stonework there, and some of the relief carvings, and some of the clues there resemble many other places I've been visiting remarkably. Not just minor kind of comparisons or coincidences, but some almost like it was the same people who done it. Here's just some examples from Göbekli Tepe. You can see the relief styles. There's sort of almost 3 different styles there. Now this really caught my attention, especially the one on the right here. I know this may be the least kind of detailed one, but when we look at some other sites like Silistani and Cotimbo in Peru, you'll see why that kind of did catch my attention. This is actually Silistani. You can see this is actually a chulpa site. These are like round towers that are funerary towers around the edge of Lake Titicaca, all over around the edge of between Peru and Bolivia. And you can see this kind of lizard here, this kind of what looks like some kind of fox or cat, and this kind of thing, it almost looks like kind of some kind of alligator. And these just been dumped in the car park. Well, actually it's like outside the museum. Like all these beautiful carvings were taken from the main towers and dumped outside the museum and left to kind of weather. And there's actually a couple of old cars and vans there kind of protecting them. I'm not sure if that's the right word. And this is Cotimbo, which is very nearby. It's about 30 miles away. And you can see the beautiful kind of stonework here. And notice these down here, these very interesting relief carvings. And these are just close-ups of some of them. And you can see the one over here is very detailed, very similar to what we saw at Göbekli Tepe, and also you have these serpents which keep coming up everywhere, and this puma. And these are huge. These are probably like 2 or 3 feet wide on massive chunks of stone, but remarkable and a beautiful site, well worth a visit if you go to Peru or Bolivia. And this just shows you some different examples of 3 different places I've recently visited. This is actually from Göbekli Tepe, and you can see how similar that is to the one from Silistani here. And this is another area of Peru we visited as well, which is a few miles north of Cusco. And this is actually from Costa Rica, the same place, the same culture that created the megalithic spheres. And we'll see some examples of the similarities there as well. And this one here is obviously from Göbekli Tepe, one of the most famous ones. This is from further north in Peru. This is Huaraz, and these are some serpents just above this doorway in the village where they found this very strange, elongated, alien-looking skull, which we'll have a look at shortly. These are the ones from Costa Rica. Again, these spheres are a real mystery. We're going to look a bit more deeply into those a little bit later, and how they seem to exist in different parts of the world. But you can see this is what's supposed to be some funerary slab they put in the graves of the great kings and queens of ancient Costa Rica. But no one really knows what they're for. Some people suggest there's something to do with navigation. I don't know how that would be. But you can see the beautiful kind of stone carving, this very hard basalt volcanic rock. And you'd have to question, why would they do that? Why not just paint on it or something like that? Here's just some serpents. This is actually from Navali Kori. Thanks to Andrew for giving me this picture. This is the back of a head that was found there. And this is potentially 10,000 years old or more. And we have the same kind of serpent carving all over Cusco. I mean, if you go to Cusco in Peru, you'll notice that the whole town, the whole city is a megalithic city. Pretty much the only one I've seen in the world like it, where you can just walk around the streets and have these huge polygonal walls every corner you take. This, you probably know, this is like the Earth of Man, found, not too far from Göbekli Tepe, the same kind of dating, about 9,000 to 10,000 years old.
Interestingly, the one on the left is actually from Costa Rica, the same culture that built the spheres, carved the spheres. And this is actually from a grave in Maya lands, or Olmec lands. And you can see this, there's little clues keep popping up, just the way they look, the arms, the hands, some of the features about them. I'm not going to go into great detail here, this is a general overview lecture, but I wanted to just show you lots and lots of pretty pictures. Obviously, I think one of the most compelling ones is the Easter Island figures and the way their hands kind of touch at the navel. And also we have similar things in Tiwanaku. Actually, this is Tiwanaku in Bolivia, and you can see they have two left hands, which is quite a rarity. You don't often see that. You can see the familiarity occurring. Oops. And these are similar ones. Again, you can see the hands touching the navel and various other parts. Sulawesi, Indonesia. Again, this is very beautiful, intricate stone cutting techniques as well. And you can see how similar they are to some of the statues found at San Augustine in Colombia, which is a completely different part of the world. And look at these crazy goggles they're wearing. These are amazing. They're like sort of spy glasses or something. And there's even these gold figurines as well, showing a similar style and design. And to me, they just seem to be a representation of whoever the gods were. But okay, here's some examples from all over the world. So I have to lean forward a bit. This is obviously the one from Earth of Man. This is Tiwanaku. These are different ones from Japan, I think. This is actually one of the statues at Göbekli Tepe. And this is Easter Island again here. So you see lots of different examples. And then one of the things that keeps popping up as well, I don't really need to hold this then, do I? One of the things that keeps popping up, excuse me, is these cut marks. Now, I hadn't really noticed this before. I've never really been that interested in cut marks. And you get this all over Britain, different parts of Europe. Thousands of sites have them. And I thought, well, what's the big deal? But it's only when I kind of started looking at different places that you keep finding them. And this is actually, these three down here from Göbekli Tepe, even on top of the T-shaped pillars, you have these cut marks, which I thought was odd, because you're not even going to see them if you're inside the temple. These are like 12, 14 foot tall or whatever. This is actually from just the bedrock nearby. This is where one of the pillars once stood in the entrance. And you actually get them Easter Island, all over the volcanic rock there. And this is from Tiwanaku. And there's a couple of other areas in Bolivia and Peru that have them as well. And I thought, well, what are they doing there? Were they trying to deface them? There's also evidence of them on Olmec statues, even on the great Olmec heads. So I've got no idea what that means, but just wanted to throw that in there. And then we have classic stone circles. I mean, obviously, people generally think stone circles are just, only in Britain or maybe France and a couple of other places. This is actually at Silastani, we've already seen, in Peru. This is Karahunj in Armenia. This is actually from Libya. This one's in England, this is up in the Lake District, and this is from Argentina. And so this is just a small example of what we're dealing with here. This is from Missoura in Morocco. Now this fascinates me. Now, Robert Temple really got me excited about this in his book Egyptian Dawn, and he did a lecture at Megalithomania a couple of years ago. And you can just see, basically this is the biggest stone circle in the world. It's bigger than Avebury. It had a mound inside it and a kind of tumulus with the kind of rock stuff happening inside it. And it's just sitting there in Morocco, going unnoticed. It's actually the biggest stone circle in the world. And even in Africa, this is like Gambia, and obviously the famous Nabta Playa, which Robert Duval has done a lot of research on. And you just go on and on and on. This is the menhirs, the stone circle that is in Argentina with some beautiful carvings on it. Again, no one really knows who built it. The dating is unclear, but they're just there to taunt us. Everywhere you go, you can't stop finding it. And even we thought Menontola was original, but no, it's actually one in North America, in New Hampshire, which is unfortunately pretty much been lost now, probably in someone's garden. And so I've not been able to find it, even though I've searched high and low in that part of New Hampshire. And so the connections keep building, and they don't really stop there. This is where we get onto the spirals. Now, some people may suggest, well, spirals, well, when you doodle on a bit of paper, you create spirals. But I question that, you know, so people suggest, well, maybe they do it all around the world, but it's a little bit different carving it into solid rock than it is doodling it on paper. Here's some examples. This one interests me because this was found near Cambridge in this quarry, and it's dated back to the Neolithic times, and it's clearly, you can't really see it that clearly, but it's actually a spiral carving on there. These are the famous stone spheres discovered all over Scotland, some in Ireland, that have spiral carvings. They also show the different Platonic and Archimedean solids, which shows a very high level of sophistication. This is one from, I think, Little Meg, near Long Meg in Cumbria. Newgrange, obviously, both of these here showing various different styles. This here I find particularly interesting because it's extremely similar, which kind of stunned me somewhat, like most of this kind of stuff does, to what we see not only in Malta here, and you can see this quadruple spiral. Take note of this one. So I find remarkably similar to this. Now, it could be a coincidence. And also, we see this almost polygonal, cyclopean kind of style, which I believe goes way back many thousands of years BC. Not quite as far as Göbekli Tepe, but certainly stretching the dating. And as researchers and different authors and people are realising, we may have to redate some of these because of Göbekli Tepe, which is what Graham was very adamant about when he was with us at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. And then you have these strange skulls. Now these start appearing now, as you'll see in the next part of the lecture. These are almost like loaf skulls. They kind of go back rather than up, like the ones in Peru and Bolivia and Mexico. And even in Sardinia, we have this kind of spiral carving, similar kind of stonework. And here we have reports of giants, not just legends, but actual reports of when they were digging the sites, excavating them, and they found giant skeletons. We even have a stone sphere here as well. Now, look at this. This blew my mind that this was actually found at Tiwanaku in remote Bolivia on the Altiplano, which is a desolate area, and it really questions why they built such a magnificent megalithic temple site so far in the middle of nowhere. When they first discovered it, they found these almost rough-hewn megaliths, 99 of them in a great rectangle, not dissimilar to the 99 stones we find at Avebury, potentially. But these were slightly shaped and cut, a bit like the ones at Stonehenge. But also they found things like this, showing this beautiful spiral carving with these reliefs of animals on them, which we've seen at other places in different parts of the world. But here we have doodles and spirals and serpents that maybe you can't see clearly, but when you're there and you get the right light on them, you can see them. And I found this rather amazing. I don't know if you can see that here. Anyone actually see the spirals on there? Yeah. You can a little bit. Okay. Okay. Difficult to tell with this kind of photo, this kind of light we're dealing with here. And also Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. This is actually one of the great statues that was found at Tiwanaku. It doesn't look particularly local. He's got a strange headgear on, which some people question, is that from a different part of the world? Maybe it's to cover up skulls like this, which were found there, which we actually got a chance to visit. Now this isn't even in the museum, this is in a local restaurant, which actually I think is where I got my tummy bug from. So I'm not blaming him or anything. But what they found nearby as well, about 60 or 70 years ago, is this. And this is the Fuente Magna Bowl. Now this has caused some controversy, especially for the fans of Zecharia Sitchin, because this shows Proto-Sumerian script on this great bowl about this size, which you can view, not at the moment because it's closed, in the Gold Museum in La Paz, Bolivia. And it has also Aymara, which is the local ancient script, next to it. It's almost like the Rosetta Stone of South America. What they've done though, they managed to date this Proto-Sumerian script to 3,500 BC being used in the Sumerian Middle Eastern region. So what is this doing it Tiwanaku? How did it get there? And why have they, and they've even worked out what it says, and it's all these incantations, these gods and goddesses, and these ceremonies. It's very beautiful kind of script they managed to decode from it. So who are these guys? Where did they come from? Is there a Sumerian connection with Bolivia? Is this like the smoking gun connecting these different cultures? Some theories even suggest that the Sumerians came over and they were mining tin and different alloys from this area, and they were taking them back to that area. And there's actually Sumerian tablets that describe these kind of things, but they always wonder where all the tin and different alloys came from. Now there's a suggestion that they know, and it could have even been a colony. Tiwanaku could have even been built by the ancient Sumerians, or certainly a collaboration between those and those people in current day Peru and Bolivia. This is in Chinchero. This is another beautiful polygonal temple site up on the hills in the Sacred Valley near Cusco, in between sort of Cusco and Machu Picchu. And you can see the polygonal walls here. You can see these beautiful spiral carvings. These have all been sort of built into the local church now. Some examples here as well. It's well worth a visit. It's a beautiful site. We go there regularly when we take people out there every November. And this is a place nearby. This is where this famous skull was found a couple of years ago. You may have even seen this on the news. I don't know if any of you remember. I think it's actually got on the BBC, so it must have been quite special. And this is just some other skulls that were found there. And basically, this is along what's called the path of Viracocha, who we'll talk about shortly. But this is some of the spiral rocks that were found at nearby sites. And these beautiful skulls, and obviously these relief carvings come from the same place. Again, Silastani, this is a different angle on Silastani, which, and this just shows you again, some skulls were discovered there, suggesting they may have been the builders. And also we find the serpent carvings and the spirals again. It just goes on and on and on, and I will actually stop at some point, so don't worry. It's not going to be like this all day. And even in Mexico, when I went to Quilquilco, this extremely ancient circular pyramid site, actually within the confines of Mexico City. Now this has been very controversially dated, this site, because there's a lava flow covering the whole area, even part of the pyramid. And when they dated it, it went back to about 7,000 BC, which caused some controversy. So they got some other people to redate it, and they managed to find some examples that were about 2000 BC, ignoring the ones that were 7000 BC. So I find that particularly interesting, especially as this beautiful this is about this big, it's not huge, but beautifully carved double spiral, some kind of ceremonial device here, was found there. So we have to question what was going on. And also, obviously, when being in Mexico, as we'll see as we look at Peru and Colombia and other places, there's the great god Quetzalcoatl, or Cuculclan, as the Mayans called him. Quetzalcoatl is the Aztec term, who apparently was some great god, some teacher person who arrived on a raft of serpents in the Gulf of Mexico. And he was supposed to be fair-skinned with a beard, which is not a local look. And he basically taught many of the arts of civilization, stopped people fighting each other, and became revered as this amazing teacher god. And even, as Graham will explain later, even when Hernan Cortes turned up there many thousands of years later, they believed he was the return of Quetzalcoatl, because he was fair-skinned with a beard on a kind of raft of serpents, turning up in the same area of the Gulf Coast. Even in the year predicted, he said he would return in. He spread all through different parts of Central America. Many of the sites were then built and revered. He was referred to as the plumed serpent, or the feathered serpent. As we'll see in other places, as we go through the Americas, similar legends and stories exist. This is very close to where he apparently arrived. This is one of the Olmec sites called La Venta. Great pyramids were built there, these Egyptian-looking statues, these African-looking heads, which don't really fit with local look, and so it's suggested that they came from across the sea from Africa. I'll sure many of you know about that. And even at Levanter, we find these, what Graham Hancock calls man bags. These are two examples. He kept going on about it in Göbekli Tepe, most amusingly. But here's an excellent example from Levanter. There's me holding my man bag. And here are some from Göbekli Tepe. There's many more. This is just a couple of examples I just wanted to throw in there because it's another anomaly that keeps popping up in different parts of the world. And even in that part of, even in Levanter and other sites, you find lots of mushrooms everywhere. So I don't know what they were doing with those, but certainly they like to carve them in stone. And some of their artwork and stonework is incredibly interesting and psychedelic. So it suggests these are all from southern Guatemala, these ones, and there's evidence of the use of bufo-marinus tow, which you can extract 5-MeO-DMT from at some of the Olmec sites. So we know they were messing about. This is actually from Peru, on the coast of Lake Titicaca. This is just called simply the Temple of Fertility. So they might have thought these weren't mushrooms, they were actually something else. But when you go there, they do look like mushrooms more than the other suggestion. And you can see the polygonal walls surrounding it. It's a very small temple site, very interesting. It's very powerful energies there. We did a lot of dowsing and we did some testing there. And yeah, so you can imagine it is quite fertilizing energy. Here is, I don't know if you can see this, Andrew gave me this last night. This is actually excuse me, carving with a sort of mushroom head of this lady from Göbekli Tepe. Excuse me a second, have some water. And excuse me. And as with Quetzalcoatl, obviously in Mexico, we had Viracocha in Peru and Bolivia, who was said to have emerged from Lake Titicaca onto the island of the sun on a raft of serpents. Again, the description is exactly the same, really, as Quetzalcoatl. It was said he took a path of Viracocha from that kind of area, so he went further south to Tiwanaku and beyond, and also way up, heading northwest through Peru up to the coast, where he was said to have made a pilgrimage route, building all the megalithic sites going from Cusco, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo. There's also the Temple of Viracocha, obviously, which is, he was said to have built. And unfortunately, later, the Inca then decided to call one of their kings Viracocha, and then they claimed to have built the site. So it became quite confusing. But here's a representation, potentially, of him. Well, I'm not too sure. This looks like some kind of different sun god with these staffs, which, again, you find in different parts of the world. And here's a representation of him emerging from the lake. Just check my time. This is actually on the north part of the lake of Titicaca, and we find this strange dolmen there, which I believe may have marked where he was said to have emerged. And obviously we find dolmens in North America, of course, just north of New York. It's one of the largest ones I've ever seen. And here's some other examples from around the world. So again, it's not something you do just for fun in different parts of the world coincidentally. I wonder if there was some kind of order or design to this. We find these kind of dolmens in China. We also find pyramids, and we find these people as well. These mummified, you know, almost look Scottish or English, fair-skinned with ginger hair. Even in Colombia, we find the same thing. We find dolmens exactly like we find in England and Ireland, Brittany and Wales. And the great god there, Bochica, again, we have the same stories as Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. I won't go into detail here, but the megalithic sites there appear to have been built by this great god with a beard and taught all these different arts and sciences. Here's some of the elongated skull effigies that have been found there. And these are some of the carvings. You see the staffs and the long heads, very strange heads, very interesting. And again, this is Sulawesi in Indonesia, very similar style and design. Again, more dolmens in Colombia, and we see, you know, these staffs very similar to what we find all over different parts of the world. Excuse me, I'm a little bit delirious from my sickness, so I might start repeating myself. This is from Tiwanaku. This is interesting because we find these horns. This is actually from Colombia. And some people have questioned, and some of the legends actually from Tiwanaku and Bolivia do state that he used horns and sound as a technique to kind of control the movement of some of the stones he was building with. Similar to what we have heard at different places around the world. This is San Augustine, Colombia, and you can see this. I found this particularly interesting because of the resemblance to those on Easter Island, which is quite a long boat ride away from Colombia, but maybe manageable. And then Andrew's going to mention this later as well, but I wanted to show you what kind of compelled me here was the style of these dolmens. Now some of them are kind of standard looking kind of dolmens with these incredible holes carved in them. But this is almost polygonal, almost Peru style. Here's just a couple of other examples. And there, they've actually, in that kind of general area, they have found giant skeletons. This is one of the huge skulls they found. Here's another newspaper report of another giant. And I'm just going to have a quick look around the world at some of the polygonal architecture. I should probably just play music to this really and just let you watch it because it's not much to really explain. You just got to look at it and you can see it for yourself, what's going on here. This is obviously Cusco, and we find lots of elongated skulls in Rapanui. Different parts of Cusco, beautiful stone carving and puffy look. There's me getting excited. A place called Sexy Woman. Actually, they say it, Sexy Woman, the way they pronounce it, I'm not joking. We look at the beautiful, not that, this here, this carved stonework and the way it bends and curls around. And some of these stones weigh over 100 tons. They're huge, remarkable sizes. This just shows you what we're dealing with here. A lot of this has even been destroyed by the Spanish when they went over. They were a lot taller than that, apparently. This is Tambo Mache, just up on the hills, beautiful water features. And even at Machu Picchu, there's lots of polygonal work here. This is just one story about a giant skeleton that was found near the Amazon, not too far from that area. This is Temple of the Three Windows, Machu Picchu, showing beautiful stonework. Again, this is just on the outside of the Temple of the Three Windows. And this is a site called Ollantay Tambo, which on the way to Machu Picchu, you kind of have to visit here before you go there. And these stones, some weighing 80, 90 tons at least. And you can see these protrusions here. These were carried over from near an opposite mountaintop. It must have all the way, it takes 3 hours to hike up this mountain. And then you have to bring it down and bring it back up this hill, which is on the top of another mountain. These are strange keyboard buttons. It's about 6 foot tall, this. Again, you can see the similarities at Silastani. This isn't so polygonal, but this is. And this kind of compelled me because this is this huge, polygonal kind of platform. And it's virtually exactly the same as one of the ones in Easter Island, where some of the Moai once stood. And there's another different wall, different platform in Easter Island. And this just shows you some of the crouching figures we saw briefly earlier at Tiwanaku. And the one on the left, the two on the left, are from Easter Island. Almost exactly the same style and size and look. This is from Giza. This is actually on the casing on the smaller pyramid, which I found, and on the second pyramid there as well, which I found compelling because it's got the same puffy look as we find it in Peru, which isn't really mentioned that much. Which kind of, when I went there, I was like, oh, I didn't know the two pyramids had massive granite, polygonal, puffy-looking stones on them, and they do. Everyone goes on about the flat, original casing stones of the Great Pyramid being white limestone, but this compelled me even more. This is in the Valley Temple, and you see these beautiful cut stones here, this strange darker rock, similar polygonal design. Again, this is in the Valley Temple, and this is supposedly a skull that was discovered there, one of the elongated skulls. I actually managed to photograph one in the Egyptian Museum. It was 3000 BC, but mysteriously I can't find that photo, so I nabbed that one off the internet. Again, you can see this kind of look here inside the Valley Temple. Now this is speculation, this bit. This is supposedly a giant's mummified finger found in Egypt. My tongue's in my cheek a little bit here, but I just wanted to show you this because this is on the internet, so it must be true. And if it is, either he had a massive hand or it was a giant. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And also the Assyrian in Abydos. Now this really blew my mind. So obviously, not only have you got some of the largest perfectly cut megaliths in the world, you've also got these protrusions here, these kind of bits sticking out. It's very similar to what we see in Peru, which does suggest common origin. Again, just close up here, actually, that's where the Flower of Life carving is. I'm not sure if that was original or later addition. And this is Osaka, Japan. Now, this is said to be built much, much later, and the king got, whoever got many different people to build it. But again, where did the idea come from? Obviously, there's suggestions that it's because it makes it earthquake-proof. But again, this is huge. I mean, this one here especially is huge. This is 108 tons, apparently. 48 square meters block, bought from several miles away, apparently. So even, supposedly this was built less than 1,000 years ago. If it was, or if the king just claimed he built it, we don't know. Even at Angkor Wat, you find slight evidence, although it's not quite as huge or quite as impressive, but even on the Buddhist statues there, and even in Belize at Lubangtu, it's kind of polygonal, and you do see, some evidence of kind of cutting and shaping them in that particular way. Interestingly, that's actually where the so-called Mitchell Hedges skull came from, that particular site, and also this spaceman and this dude here, which I visited back in 2009. Very interesting site, whatever you think about the crystal skulls, well worth a visit. And even this, just caught my attention. I think Robert Duval actually pointed this out to me once. I haven't been here, but this is some interesting sort of tombs in the United Arab Emirates. And here we can see this kind of relief carving, remarkably similar, not so far away, Göbekli Tepe. Again, just wanted to throw that in there as another example. And even here in Italy, we find similar relief carvings and polygonal style. The whole of Western Italy, in fact, has a polygonal architecture and walls, platforms, all the way along the whole west coast, north and south of Rome. I went there after getting inspired by Gary Bilcliffe's research. He sort of pointed me in the right direction. Here's just some examples. This is more of a cyclopean wall, less polygonal, but still, some of these stones, how on earth did they get them up there? They are attributed to the Pelasgians, not really the Etruscans, as most people think. Here's more examples here. The Pelasgians, no one really knows where they came from and who they were, but they were like the original megalith builders. Again, just look at the sheer, and the whole towns are surrounded by these walls in Italy, and yet not many people know about it. I mean, we are planning on going there in September as a little trip if anyone would like to join us Megalithomaniacs there. Here's one I just found from Albania, again showing the not too far from the Greek border. Again showing a sort of archway, polygonal. This is actually from Delphi in Greece. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but I never realised how impressive the polygonal stonework there is, because some of these are huge. No one really knows who built those. It's another site in Greece. Also, we have this as well, the kind of lintel, trilithon look. Another site, Greece. And this is from Turkey, where we just recently visited. This is Hattusas, and this is Alaçatı, which is incredibly amazing similarities to Peru. You can't really deny that, even at Hattusas, more at Furnace Graham, Hancock there. We all got rather excited about these polygonal walls there and the remarkable similarities to Peru. And again, even in near Lake Van, Van area. We haven't been there yet. We are planning to go there in September. This particular site caught my attention because of the precision stonework here. And where did this come from? And I found it remarkably similar to what we see in Ethiopia, these incredible obelisks. But most notably, what we find in Peru at the Coricancha, which is the centre of the world of the ancient pre-Inca and Inca societies. Precision stonework, incredible design, and the same thing at Pumapunku, you may be aware of, in Bolivia, which is next to Tiwanaku. Ridiculously perfect machining, almost, some people suggest, of stone, and these are supposed to be extremely ancient sites. The dating, there's lots of questions about the dating, obviously. And even Tiwanaku, we find similar style as well, and it's attributed that it was built by the giants in one night. That's what the legend states, that Viracocha created this race of giants. And also, Andrew sent me this. This is actually a stone face found at Göbekli Tepe, or near Göbekli Tepe, and this is the stone faces we find embedded in the sunken temple at Tiwanaku. Is that a similarity? Very interesting. And just to, this is a bit kind of fun, I have my name spelled out on the Göbekli Tepe statues here. But the H is clearly an H, that's clearly an H at Tiwanaku, at Pumapunku. Little coincidences like this are fun. Again, more just showing the massive megalithic blocks at Pumapunku, some of the spiral carvings, serpents engraved, and even in Costa Rica we find these spirals on some of the spheres. That one, I don't know if you can see that well. And again, we find these here, on some of these ones from northern Scotland, these beautiful stone spheres. And these are some of the geometries devised from that by Keith Critchlow. And these stone spheres in Costa Rica stunned me. I went there last year, I think, and we found about 60 of them in total. We had a good exploration all down the southern parts of Costa Rica, as well as around San Jose. Many of them originally are lined up into ley lines, or straight alignments, as some people suggest. There's also different ones that have been found, like there's these ones in Bosnia. Now these are more natural, but they're very interesting. Some people suggest they may not be natural, but they are remarkably round, some of them, none of them quite perfect, and not the sort of precision we see in Costa Rica, which is compelling to say the least. Other ones have been found in Serbia, Italy, Sardinia even, near many of the megalithic towers and sites there. France even, although these appear to be natural. And even New Zealand, these famous boulders found on the coast, and even in China. So I find these quite interesting. Even in San Lorenzo, an Olmec site in Mexico along the Gulf Coast. Not a perfect sphere, but obviously they would like to make round things there as well. And I even found these strange ones at Teotihuacan in Mexico under the Quetzalcoatl pyramid. These metallic spheres, no one knows where they came from. And even at Rapanui, went there with Robert Schock last year, and the navel of the world there of that particular culture is an almost sphere, as you can see there, marking that particular. And I actually did a lecture about this at Megalithomania earlier this year, elaborating on all that different things, all these different spheres. How am I doing for time, Andrew?
You're okay for a minute.
Okay, a minute. So here we have the trilithons. So these kind of compel me as well. We find these at different places. This is just some examples I lifted off different parts of the internet. Tripoli. This is actually accessible man, and this is actually, you can see again why would you do that? And this actually has mortise and tenon joints like we see at Stonehenge. And even this is obviously a photo from ancient times, showing you how it was built. But interestingly, we have the same mortise and tenon joints here as well, obviously famously. But I found 2 or 3 reports of giant skeletons being found near Stonehenge. Maybe not quite looking like him, but these strange coincidences keep popping up. Even Merlin, in the history of the kings of Britain, was said to have employed giants from Ireland to build Stonehenge for him, which is a smart way to do it. Again, this is actually in Mexico. Again, we have the same kind of lintel with mortise and tenon, potentially joints. This is at Mitla, which is again near Monte Alban, the Oaxaca area. Again, it's another photo. That was some of the precision stonework, which attributed to the Zapotec culture. Again, we find the elongated skulls all along the Gulf Coast, Oaxaca area, even in Honduras and around Mexico City. This is actually from La Venta again, and this is from that general area. And this is a place called Sonora, which is almost on the American border. And they found these amazing skulls there recently, but 80 years earlier, they found a whole series of 9 to 11 foot skeletons in exactly the same area as these longheads. It's the only place I found where there's evidence of both in that particular. And these are some examples from around the world. Andrew shared this with me last night, managed to get it into the lecture. But here's just some examples. These are lots of examples from North America, even Ukraine, different parts of Europe, Ecuador. The Malta longheads we saw earlier in Mexico, Micronesia, the list goes on. And we know they were cradle boarding and sort of squeezing the head in these different cultures, but there's some tests being carried out in Peru at the moment and in different parts of the world that suggest it's almost like a different type of skull. Some have different amount of sutras, some have the sheer volume of some of the heads is so large that it doesn't make sense. They would have had just big heads to start with. Why, how did that happen? So the tests are being done now. There's a lot of research being carried out, and obviously it seems to be pretty much suppressed, like many of the most interesting things are. This is from Mark LaPlume. He put this graphic together for Brian Forrester, which allowed me to put in the lecture, just different examples from Peru. These are just particular ones from Peru which kind of compel me, especially this one. This guy, that's gold. Oh, this is actually gold plate. This is trepanning, huge area of the skull. It was cut out and surgery was done on it going back at least 3,000 years. And a gold plate was put in and the bone grew around the gold to hold it in place. This is actually in the museum, the Archaeological Museum in Lima. They've just opened up this new exhibit showing the different types of elongated skull and trepanning. This one kind of caught my attention, that one there. Not sure why, but some people say it's a fake. I've not seen the actual skull myself, but I've seen other pictures of 4 or 5 different skulls from North America that show signs of small horns growing. Very small protrusions coming out here, which I find quite scary, quite bizarre. And this is actually from Wisconsin, and there's some other examples here. So we know there's some weird stuff going on in North America. Excuse me. Just let you dwell on this one for a moment. Okay, that's enough. And just to, put a little spanner in the works here, this was found, this particular thigh bone was found, within the vicinity of Göbekli Tepe, a few hundred miles, here and there, which I find particularly weird and interesting that was just found there. I'm going to say no more on that matter. I wanted to throw that in there, but it's in North America where it gets weird. There's so many giant skeletons have been found there. It just gets odd. This is actually Serpent Mound, just comparing it to Bletchley Tall. This skeleton was found at Serpent Mound. This was 7 foot tall without, and it was cut off at the knee, so it's probably 8.5 feet tall. One example of many. This one was found in San Diego, in California. Many giants, hundreds, in fact, of skeletons have been found on the Catalina Islands and on the coast of California. I actually visited a place called Lompoc in California to investigate a 12-foot skeleton that was discovered there. I went there in 2008, and it was discovered in the early 1900s on Lompoc Ranch, a 12-foot skeleton with double rows of teeth. I went there to the area it was found Lompoc Ranch, and now it's a whole military zone. and you're not allowed in there, which I thought was interesting. A bit gutted I went all that way. This is the famous island giant, one of many that have actually been found in Ireland. Some people say it's a fake, but with all the evidence coming forth, this is a huge footprint found in South Africa with Michael Tellinger posing next to it. Now he's actually, 5'10" or something, so that's quite a large footprint, I believe. So either it was like a big clown or it was extremely large person. Some examples from England. This is one found in a tumulus. No exact description. These are just a few examples I did a bit of research on around England and Britain. This one's up in Scotland. Actually at Stone Circle, this one. And even at Fornox and some of the mounds near Fornox in Ireland, which we visited this summer, 10-foot skeletons were found. And myself and a guy called Jim Vieira, some of you may know, from up in Massachusetts, he's done a lot of research, and we're sort of collaborating on a small book just covering some of the reports in North America, and we're going to put all the reports in we found around the world, because we think it's just one of these fascinating, unusual subjects, which is rather compelling. And I think not many people kind of know about it, and it's not just all legends. There's more to it than meets the eye. And there's my book. Okay, so basically, I'm going to finish up now, but I just wanted to kind of just give you that as an overview of some of the things I get quite excited by. I travel a lot, I explore, I kind of try and piece things together, but sometimes the evidence is just staring you in the face, and you don't need to try and convince anyone of anything. I think that's what is so interesting about this research, for anyone who's interested in this, is that you can just look for yourself. I think that's one of the keys to being a megalithomaniac. And so today you're going to have a very amazing time with some of the speakers, some of the subjects we're going to be exploring. So thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it. Cheers.